Hi friends, and welcome back to another episode of The Period Feels. Oh, it is so sad saying that by myself. I sound like such a doofus. As y'all know, we always say the Period Feels jingle in like a fun way that kind of emanates the material girl, sound from TikTok. But it just does not hit the same when I'm alone in studio. This is Nadia Okamoto speaking, co-founder and CEO of August. And as you know, usually I'm joined by my two dear friends and co-workers, but we're much more than co-workers. We're very good friends, Sam and Nettie, but both are out of town or out sick today. So I am flying solo on this one, but I am super excited because we are going to be tackling a subject that we get a lot of questions about. So without further ado, we are going to hear from our community member our question that we'll be focusing on today.
Hi, I'm Tam and I'm 25 years old living in Florida. My question for August is, I have super painful periods and sometimes I need to stay home from school. I'm worried about what will happen when I graduate and get a job. So what can jobs do to be more mindful of periods and work?
One of the reasons I think we stay so passionate about the conversation around periods is that there are so many different angles around talking about period health, right? There is no one way to look at it because it is so intertwined with overall our relationship with our bodies, our relationship with society. So I think that the conversation around ableism and periods is one that we are just scraping the surface of, and it's one that I think that we, as a period brand with a platform, absolutely have a responsibility to discuss. So in this episode, we're going to be kind of lightly touching on ableism, but with a really strong focus on chronic illnesses and periods. And I actually find the overall term chronic illness to be something that I haven't heard too much in this space, but I'm eager to get into because there's so many related conditions around periods that are considered chronic illnesses. And that includes endometriosis, PMDD, these different conditions where there might be some sort of illness or ailment for a prolonged amount of time, whether that be extreme period pain, heavier bleeding, more severe PMS symptoms. And I don't have endometriosis, and I don't believe anyone on our team does, but I learned that I do fall into the category of having chronic illnesses because I have very severe constipation and IBS, which is apparently considered a chronic illness, but also as someone with, anxiety and depression, those are also chronic illnesses as well, which is really fascinating to me. I think that when we talk about periods and even designing period care, we have to talk about the conversation around ableism and how a period experience changes for able bodies versus people who have different abilities. And I think that also when we talk about changing culture around periods and changing how we're creating a more inclusive community or workforce or school environment, we have to talk about chronic illnesses, disabilities, differently abled bodies as well. I think, as you can probably tell, even in the language that I'm using, I think I'm still at the beginning of my journey of learning more about this whole space and the advocacy happening in the chronic illness and disability space. So I'm not ever going to pretend to be an expert, and I'm actually going to be bringing in two of my dear friends who are both incredible founders, entrepreneurs, and advocates in the space, and also people who experience chronic illnesses themselves. Our two guests today are dear friends of mine, Nitika Chopra and Hannah Olson. Nitika Chopra is the founder of Chronicon, and she's going to be talking to us about the work she's doing in creating online digital community, but also whole conferences and curriculums on creating more community support and overall cultural changes to support people with chronic illnesses. Our second guest is Hannah Olson. She is the founder of Chronically Capable, which is really inspired by her own journey with Lyme disease. She's going to talk to us a little bit about her personal journey with it and how it's impacted her own work and social and personal life. And Chronically Capable is now working with many workplaces, many large workplaces, to make sure that the workplace is becoming a more inclusive environment for people of all different abilities and people who are experiencing chronic illnesses as well. So with that, let's get started, and here is my conversation with my friend Nitika. Welcome, Nitika. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I feel like kind of nervous interviewing you, but in a good way, because we have so much to cover and you have so many incredible things to say on this topic. But also, you are the pro here. You were a TV personality, a host, and everything. So I'm so excited to dive into this. But just to kind of give a little bit of quick background, can you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what Chronicon is?
Yeah, sure. I founded Chronicon in 2019, and I founded it because I had experienced my own health journey with having two chronic illnesses, and Chronicon is a platform dedicated to celebrating the chronic illness experience. And so we started with an in real life conference in New York City, and now we have an online community, and we're bringing back the conference actually for this fall.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. We'll have to
Yeah.
follow up about how we can collaborate on that.
Yeah.
And do you mind sharing a little bit about what are those two chronic illnesses and how do they play a role in your everyday life?
Yeah, so I got diagnosed with psoriasis at the age of 10, which is an autoimmune disease that affects your skin mostly. And I ended up having psoriasis from the tip of my foot to the tip of my head. So a lot of people have psoriasis, but sometimes they have it in like a patch or on their scalp, which is challenging for sure. But I ended up having it covering 98% of my body, and it was like that for about 17 years of my life. And then when I was 19, I ended up getting psoriatic arthritis. And so the inflammation that you saw on my skin actually went into my joints, and I couldn't walk without severe pain for about 6 or 7 years. So yeah, they impact my everyday life. I mean, it's interesting. Even, I was telling you before we started, I have long haul COVID too right now. So my vocal cords are a little different than normal for me. But even that, right, we're going through this pandemic and it impacts me every day that I'm an immune compromised person, that I have, higher amounts of inflammation in my body, that my body is fighting to be okay all the time. And it impacted me socially a lot when I was growing up. And so that's something I've had to really work through. There's so many layers to it. But yeah, it's had a massive impact on my life.
And when you talk about building the community on Chronicon, like, how do you explain who that community is for, right? Because I think that chronic illness is such a big, vast bucket. Like, what are the different illnesses, or like, for example, IBS, is that a chronic illness? Like, what
Yeah.
is the kind of spectrum of who the community is for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are over 133 million Americans that we know of that have a chronic illness. And that number has not been updated since the pandemic. So we know that that number has increased substantially since we got that number in 2019. But that's what we know as of now. And a chronic illness, as stated by the National Health Council, is anything that has persistent symptoms for 3 months or longer. So yes, IBS, psoriasis, anxiety, depression, diabetes, lupus, endometritis, PCOS, these are all conditions that are considered chronic illnesses. And so for the community in particular, sorry, I'm just going to take a breath.
All good.
So for the Chronicon community in particular, it's anyone who is really ready to own that they are a full person with a chronic illness. We talk about the struggles and the challenges, the shame, the vulnerability, all of that comes from having a chronic illness in Chronicon. We do that through events every week and content every day. But we also really push ourselves to celebrate all that we are, even with these conditions.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's such an important conversation to have also in the period space, right? I think that one of the things we've been really focusing on is like, how do we expand the inclusivity of the conversations we can have to make sure we're veering away from ableism in talking about periods? And I think, as you said, there are conditions that are period related, endometriosis, PMDD, that are absolutely chronic because periods are constant. And I'd really love to hear a little bit about like, what do you think it looks like to have a world, that is more accepting of all different abilities, but also is accepting, but also celebrating people with chronic illnesses, right? What does that world look like?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I mean, I think there's so many ways, and you know this, especially with all the work that you're doing, like there's so many ways you can tackle an issue, right? And hopefully with whatever solutions we come up with, we're tackling it in many ways. But for me, I always look to media because I think that what we see out there and what we're seeing in our, on our Netflix and in our online magazines and listening to podcasts, it matters. It matters. And a lot of that content is the most accessible content that people have as well, right? So I think a lot about the curvy movement, actually, when I think about the chronic illness conversation, because for many, many years, there were individuals who are curvy who were really told that they don't matter in terms of when they get dressed on their wedding day or, what they're wearing at work. I'm just going to take a breath. My vocal cords do not normally sound like this. So I think a lot about the curvy movement and how the change happened in that conversation. So a lot of times you look at, curvy individuals were told that when they got married, they didn't matter what they wore on their wedding day. They never wore suits to work, athletic wear, right? All of these were not a part of the things that you saw curvy women mostly being told that they get to be a part of. And for chronic illness, it's very similar. When I got arthritis at the age of 20, at the age of 19, the only athletic class or the only workout class was a geriatric chair class. And I was 19, right? And I was 19. So I'm like, where's my class for like a New Yorker that is an entrepreneur, that is an Indian woman that like loves makeup and like has friends and also has arthritis, right? So for me, I see that shift being what we need to do. We need to have an industry that recognizes us on every level. Now the curvy industry is a $21 billion a year industry. And so I want us to have that. I want us to have our own athletic classes, our own, wedding, like maybe we have our own mobility aids for our wedding day, whatever it might be. But that's the shift that I want to see, because when you turn on the TV or you look at your favorite magazine or you listen to your favorite podcast and you see somebody who's going through what you're going through, someone who's going through long COVID just like me, it makes a huge difference.
I mean, it's incredible. And I feel like what you're creating, even from a community perspective, I feel like is so important, especially now when people with chronic illnesses, I mean, like yourself, right, aren't really able to venture out into the world when there's a deadly pandemic going on, right? Mm-hmm. And so to be able to create an online community that is having these multiple times a week virtual events is so important. I know you are also in New York City, but weren't able to join us in studio today because with long haul COVID symptoms as well, kind of traveling distance even within the city has been challenging. I'm curious, like, in your current situation, right? Mm-hmm. I can't even imagine how frustrating it must be, given that you are a curvy model yourself, a TV personality, very social, has a lot of friends. I can't imagine how frustrating it is. And so I'm curious, if you have advice for other people, or just even from your own experience of how you're able to keep up that optimism.
I mean, it's an everyday moment to moment process. And I think it's so important to name that, because a lot of times, we hear people talk about self-love or being positive or optimistic. And it's often, glorified as this like destination of where we need to go. And I need to have self-love for myself. I need to love the fact that I'm doing my best in this moment, right? I have never done, I have a podcast. I have all these things going on. I have never done a podcast or something where I sound like this. This is not my normal voice. And it's okay. It's my absolute best, right? So constantly showing up for myself, and even in the community, I've had to do events in our community where my vision is going, where I can't see certain things, my voice is going. The amount of love and support that I have gotten from those members who get it, right, has been so, so healing. So how do I stay positive? It's by surrounding myself with people who get it. Also, it's not fair that we always have to be the one to advocate for ourselves, but it also is a great opportunity to do that. And it shows you who's really got your back. Like when I sent you a message and said, I'd love to come in studio, but I actually can't see properly right now, so I need to stay home. You were like, great, we'll Zoom, we'll do another thing. You didn't skip a beat or make me feel any kind of way about it, right? So you kind of start to see who are the people that are going to be in your corner and on your tribe, and who are going to be a part of your your corner and be able to support you in that. And then know that I'm going to feel how I'm going to feel in one moment, and maybe that moment's going to be great, and maybe that's when I go on Instagram and I promote something that I have to promote. And then the next moment I'm going to be like, I need to watch Friends and eat dark chocolate and not talk for a couple of hours. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's a moment to moment thing. And anyone who tries to make you feel like you should have arrived or you should have figured it out, don't listen to them, because that's just not how it works.
Yeah. Thank you so much for, imparting your wisdom and your story with us. Where can people find out more about Chronicon and join the community or stay tuned for future events?
Yeah, well, definitely follow us at Chronicon Official on Instagram. And the ChroniconCommunity.com is where you can sign up for the actual community, which is linked in our Instagram bio.
And your personal socials?
At Nitika Chopra.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nitika. Seriously, so inspired by you, and I hope you're feeling better soon. As you know, I'm always a text or a call away, and I just love you so much. And I hope you just go rest and reward yourself today.
Thanks for having me. I love all the work that you do, so it's really an honor to be a part of this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Hannah.
Hey, Nadia. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. Busy week, but busy is good, right?
Oh, I'm sure. Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Atlanta, Georgia. That's like the first time I've actually said that to someone. That's crazy. I'm new here.
And you just moved from Austin. The last time I saw you was in Texas.
In Texas.
And how long have you been in Atlanta, like officially?
Today is 3 weeks, so brand new to Atlanta.
Oh, wow. Well, so excited to sit down with you and hear a little bit more about your work with Chronically Capable. I would love to hear a little bit about where your own journey starts with chronic illness and advocacy around more inclusive workspaces.
Absolutely. So I also went to college in Boston. Not sure if you knew that. But during the time I was really sick with chronic Lyme disease. If you're listening and not familiar, essentially got bit by a tick and didn't know for a long time. So it infected my joints, brain, my memory, very exhausted, kind of the full gamut of symptoms there. And when I entered the workforce, I had the added difficulty of being hooked up to IV antibiotics for about 8 hours a day. which you can imagine is difficult to balance with anything, but especially with a full-time job. And so I experienced firsthand in my first job out of school down in Washington, D.C., just how hard it was to really balance and to be able to talk about my illness at work and to ask for accommodations. And so I've been an employee living with illness, and now I get to help folks living with illness. But it's been a crazy few years, and I'm happy to say I am doing very well as of 2019.
So, I mean, I can't even imagine like having a chronic illness that, affects your situation with work so deeply. I think my biggest chronic illness or something is being severely constipated, but I'm still able to work and everything. And I think it's so important as we talk about like building company culture, even here at August, like trying to really keep these things in mind. So I think with your experience with Lyme disease, is this something that you are able to move past, or is it kind of something that continuously comes back like every few years? What is the relationship with it now?
Yeah, so I'd say that I'm currently in what we would call remission, so similar to cancer, in that it's not active and I'm doing well. I got my PICC line took it out. When was that? It was beginning of COVID. So I've been PICC line free for 2 years here. There's always the chance that it'll come back, and I do deal with other symptoms from Lyme, so things like I faint from time to time, and I have some heart issues and some period issues which are unrelated to my Lyme disease. So I think everyone deals with stuff in their lives and when they're working, and it's all about finding workplaces that allow you to live with these things and not have to hide these things.
So it sounds like your experience with Lyme disease is really what inspired Chronically Capable. When was Chronically Capable started, and what was the journey of getting it off the ground?
Yeah, so I, had this experience where I went to work down in DC, and at the time, my boss was truly the most not inclusive human being that you could ever encounter in your life. That was like the best way to put it, because I'm not going to put anyone down here. But I got to a point where I actually wasn't allowed to administer my medication at my desk, and so you can imagine that's hard to do because I'm trying to save my life here. And so ultimately, I left that company and was hired by a guy named Kai. And he was running a different startup in this space, actually unrelated to this space, sorry. And I started working in marketing with him, and it was in that office that, I wanted everyone to have a boss like Kai, someone who cared, who asked questions, who left tampons in the office for the 2 girls that worked in the company. I just thought that the workplace was something that felt very inaccessible for people like me. And so I quite literally cornered Kai during our lunch break one day and just said, I think that there's an opportunity to help people like me, and I want more people to have bosses like you. And so that was really the inception. That was back in October 2018. We officially launched in beginning of the pandemic, so February 2020. And so we've grown a lot over the last few years, but I've gotten to grow and work alongside my former boss. A lot of people don't know that about our relationship, that he's now my co-founder, but he's also my former boss.
Oh, that's incredible. And tell us a little bit about what Chronically Capable does.
Yeah, so Chronically Capable is a talent marketplace. It's a job platform that helps folks with various chronic conditions, mental illness, really anything that affects your health, to jobs that are in line with your health needs. And so we work very closely with employers ranging from startups all the way to major enterprises, and we help them to really identify what we can offer for our employees. And so when you're actually searching for a job on the platform, you're able to really filter and find jobs that are actually in line with what you're looking for, rather than just going into a company blindly and not knowing if they can support my needs. That's what it's all about. We've grown now to the largest community of chronically ill and disabled professionals worldwide. Wow. We're in 152 countries in all 50 states. And really about to expand our efforts. So we're in a really exciting time of taking Chronically Capable to really the next level.
And what does that next level look like?
Yeah, so this is the first time I've ever spoken about it. So
exciting!
Publicly. So if y'all are here listening, you are really insiders. We just filed our provisional patent a few weeks ago, so now I'm able to speak a lot more freely. But so through our experience with Chronically Capable, we figured out a huge gap that existed. We were supporting this population and finding jobs, which of course is important, and we all want to work. It's work gives us purpose and meaning, right? I'm sure you can relate to that, Nadia.
Absolutely.
You're a very hard worker. But what we were realizing that a lot of folks on our platform were leaving our platform, going to the company's website and applying for the same job. And so we started doing a lot of digging on this and learning that people were scared to out themselves to these companies, and they didn't want to be identified as someone having a disability. And it was over and over and over, we were just being inundated with questions about, how do I tell my employer about this? How do I ask for accommodations? It feels very uncomfortable. Employers on the other side, or on the other hand, were telling us, we don't know anything about how to ask people. We're not allowed to hold this information in our own HR systems. And so there was a lot of panic on both ends. And everyone just doesn't know how to disclose and ask for accommodations because there's been no process for that. And so we're launching our new product. It's called Disclo, short for disclosure. And it's really a product that allows you to safely disclose your health condition, to then verify that with your medical provider, and then ask for accommodations without ever having to share your underlying condition. So the best way to put it, I have anxiety. I have to go to therapy every other Thursday at 2:00, but I don't want to tell my boss that. There's a lot of conflict of interest. It's awkward. And so I would tell Disclo. Disclo then verifies that with my psychiatrist or my therapist. And then all we tell my employer is, hey, Hannah's verified. She's got an appointment on Thursdays at 2:00. Because our stance is, it shouldn't matter. So we're really excited to be rolling this out. I think it's going to really close the loop on disability inclusion in the workplace.
That's incredible. I think that there is so much that I, want to ask you about. But one of the things I really wanted to ask about was around kind of the beginning steps of creating a more inclusive workplace for people with different abilities or disabilities. And at August, we talk a lot about language, right? Like even in creating a more gender inclusive workspace or just community or society, it starts with changing the language that we use, right? Not using gendered terms, but really talking about it from the lens of people who menstruators. But when August and when we've talked even about like ableism in the period space, we've gotten a lot of comments that are very much around the contentiousness around the language that we use. And I was curious kind of your thoughts on like using terms like disabled versus differently abled, and do you see this like element of language or even how to speak about disabilities and ableism? Is this an issue when you're working honestly with like the executives at these companies?
It is. I think there's a huge lack of understanding and a lot of fear. Am I saying the right thing? And you know what? I think it's important to note that we all have our own internalized things that we've grown up hearing, whether it's from our parents, movies, all of these things, and we all make mistakes. I've made mistakes. I've said the wrong thing. But I think what's most important is the motivation to recognize this and the motivation to change. And so when it comes to language regarding disability, there's person first and identity first. One of being Hannah who has a disability, or Hannah is disabled, that type of thing, or the disabled versus has a disability. And there's a lot of confusion around this. I think at the end of the day, everyone's going to have different opinions. There's no right or wrong. But we like to say that disability is not a bad word. It affects a third of the population. Chronic illness affects 60% of the population. And so it shouldn't be something that we're stigmatizing and making a dirty word. Disability is not a dirty word. It's something that should be celebrated because it affects most people at some points in our lives.
Yeah, I am so excited about the work that you're doing with Disclo because I feel like there's a complete need for it, obviously with people experiencing disabilities or, having chronic illnesses, but also very much so with periods, right? I think something we talk about a lot at August is just being respectful and inclusive of even our team members who have really bad period cramps, right? Where they don't even have an official condition like endometriosis or uterine fibroids, but a few times a week, like they cannot get out of bed because their period cramps are so bad, right? And they're sitting on calls and they're like clutching their abdomen because they're in so much pain. And I think one of the things that is kind of a global debate in the period space is around things like period leave and accommodations for your period. And it's hard because it's always, I think I even see it as a double-edged sword sometimes, because obviously there's going to be a lot of assumptions on who has a period and who doesn't. And because of the stigma around periods of being more quote unquote hormonal, and lack of judgment when you have those hormonal changes, or not being able to work to your full ability if you are menstruating, like those are all stigmatized assumptions that I think are made about menstruators. But also at the same time, like, it has been shown that in places, in companies, or even in countries where period leave has been mandated, right, which is menstruators get a certain amount of time per month where they can take menstrual leave, which is kind of similar to sick leave, but specifically for your period. And it shows, there's the positive aspect of that, of we're creating accommodations for people who have period pain, people who have related conditions where they aren't able to work, especially more physical jobs. But on the flip side of that, it is giving like a reason and giving a hesitation of higher ups or executives from, elevating or giving more responsibility or promoting menstruators who are taking advantage of that menstrual leave, given in their minds, they're thinking, okay, well, this person is not able to work 100% of the time because they're menstruating and taking menstrual leave, right? And of course, I think like my stance on this is that we need to completely reimagine what we consider like productivity and work hours, and, not stigmatizing even needing accommodations. But I'm curious how you think of that at Chronically Capable and Disclo, right? Where we need to make accommodations, and we need to be able to create a culture in which like people should feel comfortable taking advantage of things or benefits like period leave. But how do you actually change the culture around where some of those higher up, or even from like a larger corporation standpoint, are also seeing it as like lost work time, or not being able to fulfill certain responsibilities? How do you approach that conversation?
That is a wonderful question, and I think you touched upon a lot of things that I want to address, but I'll try to keep this succinct. First off, on the fact of productivity, I think it's really interesting that in most countries outside of the US, accommodations are referred to as productivity enhancers, right? Because an accommodation enables you to do your job better. And if we don't have these accommodations, we're not able to do our job. And so we're going to be unhappy at work. We're not going to want to be reporting to our manager. We're going to be tired. And we're also holding back a huge piece of our identity and who we are. And so that's why I'm so excited about bringing Disclo to the market, because I don't think it should matter if you're menstruating, if you have chronic migraines, if you're pregnant. All of these things, in theory, are covered under the ADA. What people don't really know is that the ADA umbrella, the word disability, it's not a standard list of here are the 1,000 things that are covered. It's actually just about things that are impacting a certain part of your work, right? And so, or of your life. And so I think that's what's so interesting, is that we're taking that out of the equation. No one needs to know that this is because you have endometriosis and you have period cramps. They just need to know that I need flexible work and leave due to something that has been verified. And I think at the end of the day, from the education standpoint and what you're talking about from higher ups, I think, we've seen historically the main reason that people don't disclose things, whether that be their period cramps or whether that be their disability, these types of things, is because they think they're not going to get promoted, or it's going to affect how people treat them at work. And I think that comes from higher ups and leadership not disclosing and not talking about their own struggles. As a kid and growing up, I saw female leaders. That was happening high school, college. People were talking about being a woman in the workplace, but no one was talking about having a disability. And so when I got to the point where I was disabled, I didn't know who to look up to. And so I think it needs to be something from the top down, where people are being open about this and showing that you can climb the ladder, even if you're living with diverse experiences and experiences that can harm you in certain ways. Like, having an illness or disability can be a painful thing to go through. And so seeing people like that, I think, is so important. And so to mitigate that, we do a lot of education, a lot of lunch and learn sessions where we're going into companies and saying, hey, I'm Hannah and I actually have a disability, even though I don't look like it. And I think that kind of education has been missed for a long time. We talk about all of the isms, sexism, racism, all of these things. Ableism is the last one on the list. No one ever knows what it even means. And so bringing that to the front of the conversation is where I think we're going to start to make some moves. So I'm glad you're even talking about this and talking about periods at work, because it's something I don't even hear. And I work in the workspace, in the work world.
No, I mean, we're so inspired by the work you're doing. And I think that, even in creating like our company culture at August, like we're constantly talking about, I mean, even like if you're tired, like take a nap, during the day, like just trying to be as inclusive as possible. But I think that it's been really fascinating in conjunction with the conversation about periods because like periods are so stigmatized that then there's like the added layer of like ableism and the stigma around having disabilities or chronic illnesses around related conditions, right? That are very much related to your period, whether that be around period pain or PMS symptoms and things like that. So incredibly inspired by what you're doing. Where can people find out more about the work you're doing at Chronically Capable and Disclo, and how do people stay in touch with you?
Absolutely. So, Chronically Capable, you can come join us. Our website is www.wearecapable.org because we are all capable. Disclo is not out yet. I don't know when this podcast will get released, but we're going to be launching in the next couple of weeks here. And our website is disclo.com. All of our handles are Disclo time, like disco time, because we're celebrating our differences here.
I love that.
So come join us, come Disclo with us. I think, like you said, Nadia, it's so important that we're creating these spaces, that we're talking about these things, because I didn't imagine a world as a kid that we were talking about being different in the workplace. And so whether you're menstruating, living with an illness, living with a disability, come join us, and thank you.
I love that so much. And I hope you have a launch party, like disco party, launch party situation. That'd be really fun.
I do have a lot of disco balls around my house now. I gotta say, once the name was chosen, it was like Etsy, disco ball. So hopefully, and I'll make my way to New York and we can disco together.
Yes, for sure. I'm so excited. Well, thank you so much for joining us. So inspired by you. And I'm also excited to use Disclo as a company. So excited for the launch. We'll definitely time the podcast to be released right around the launch. So thank you so much, Hannah, and we'll talk soon.
Perfect. Thank you, Nadia.